Cresthill Academy was one of those schools that everyone in the town knew about. But not everyone truly understood it. The towering building and wide empty field made it look peaceful from the outside. But there was something uncertain vibe that clung to the school like a second skin. People whispered about it when they thought no one was listening. The teacher spoke in hushed tone when the topic came up, and the students, well, they were either too afraid to speak or too naive to understand. There was a classroom, the famous SS3F, a classroom that no one would acknowledge, although everyone secretly feared it. Miss Ada had just finished her NYSC and was full of hope and energy. She was excited about her first real teaching job, having heard nothing but good about Cresthill Academy. But the school, as Miss Ada would soon find out, was hiding much more than it let on. When she met the principal, Miss Tomi, she was struck by the woman's towering figure and gentle smile. Yet there was unspoken sadness in her eyes, something that made Miss Ada feel uneasy. Miss Ada, said the principal, "You will be teaching SS3F. Miss Ada blinked, unsure she has heard right. SS3F? I didn't see that in the class list during the assembly. Is that an error?" Miss Ada asked. "No, it is a real class," Miss Tomi replied with a soft smile. "You will find your classroom in the old building of the school." Miss Ada nodded, but couldn't shake off the hot feeling that hung in the air. SS3F? She had never heard of it before. Was she really supposed to be teaching a class that didn't even seem to exist? The next morning, Miss Ada made her way to the old building after the morning assembly. The sun barely reached the long narrow hallway, and the silence seemed to pierce in on her from all sides. As she approached the class, she felt a chill creep up her spine, even though the weather was warm. She hesitated for a moment, but pushed the door open. Inside, a group of students were already seated at their desks. Not a single sound filled the room. They wore their uniform perfectly neat, as if they had just walked from the halls of the academy. But there was something wrong. They did not move. Miss Ada stepped inside, and the silence deepened. The students didn't look at her. They did not acknowledge her presence in any way. Their faces were wide open but lifeless. "Good morning, class," Miss Ada said, her voice a bit shaky. No one responded. A feeling of discomfort washed over her. She had heard stories about ghost classes from other teachers, but she had always laughed off their silly rumor. But now, standing in the middle of SS3F, she wasn't so sure. Each day, the silence of SS3F grew worse. The students never moved. They sat still, staring ahead as if they were part of the furnitures. Miss Ada tried everything, asked questions right on the board, calling them by name, but they never spoke. They never acknowledged her presence. And then there was something even more stranger. During the morning assembly, every other class were present and accounted for, but SS3F students were never in line. Where did they go? Miss Ada felt her confusion growing. The rumor she overheard from the other teachers now felt like cold truth. One afternoon, Mrs. Ada couldn't take it any longer. She stopped Mr. Jide, the literature teacher, in the staff room. She needed answers. The situation was getting out of control, and she couldn't make sense of it on her own. "Mr. Jide, I need to ask you about SS3F, she said, her voice low, careful not to draw attention. Mr. Jide looked up to his papers, his face suddenly tight with discomfort. "There is no SS3F, he said quickly, glancing around to make sure that no one else was listening. "There haven't been for years." "What do you mean? I'm teaching it," Miss Ada said. Mr. Jide's eyes widening. Then he leaned in closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Miss Ada. SS3F was shut down 15 years ago. Something had happened in the school then. The school pretended it didn't happen, but the truth is, there is something there, something dark." Miss Ada froze. What happened to the students? Mr. Jide hesitated. They were killed, poisoned by one of their own, Williams Ogundele's daughter. Tomi was the one who did it. She killed them all. What do you mean? That can't be truth. Miss Ada's voice cracked as she spoke. Principal Tomi would never. Jide shook his head. You don't understand. Okay then, let me tell you the full story of what truly happened. 15 years ago, Cresthill Academy had a class called SS3F. In that class was a girl named Tomi. Tomi was the principal's only daughter. Tomi tried very hard to learn at school, but she just couldn't understand them. Every time a teacher asked her a question, she froze. Her classmates laughed and whispered, Tomi is so slow. Their words make her feel sad and lonely. One day, Tomi ran to her father, the principal. She begged him, please tell the teachers to let me pass. The other students are making fun of me when I fail. But her father shook his head. Even if you try, you must earn your pass. I can't force the teachers to give you the grade you did not earn. Tomi felt desperate and hurt. She didn't know what to do. 2 weeks later, it was Tomi's birthday. She had a big cake to share to her classmates. Tomi felt so hungry and ashamed. Then she mixed something bad into their cake. When the classmates ate it, they all got sick and died. Tomi was terrified. She ran to her father crying, please help me. He loved her so much and he was also frightening too. He decided to hide the truth. At night, he buried the students behind the old classroom. The next morning, he told everyone in the school that the student had sneaked off to a birthday party and never came back. People wonder why Tomi returned. Families became scared and began to take their children out of Cresthill Academy. To keep Tomi safe, her father sent her to another country to finish her schooling. Back at Cresthill Academy, strange things started happening. Empty uniform would drift through the halls. Whispers filled the whole classroom at night. Some teachers and students felt a cold breeze even when the windows are closed. Everyone knew that there were ghosts of SS3F, the students who had died. To stop the ghostly noise and the moving uniforms, the principal asked the priest for help. The priest hung a special magic clock on the classroom door. He said, this clock will hold the spirits here and keep them safe until they can rest. From that day on, the door of SS3F stayed locked, and the clock tickled softly. And though you might still hear a whisper or see a gentle swaying uniform, the student spirits were no longer free to wander. They waited quietly, and one day they would be at peace. The more Miss Ada heard, the more confused she became. She had to find out the truth. That evening, after the final bell rang, Miss Ada went to the school library to research the history of SS3F. It wasn't long before she stumbled upon an old dusty record book, hidden in the back of the corner. Flipping through the yellow pages, she found an entry about the class. A class that was mysteriously shut down after a tragic incident. It was said that Tomi, the troubled student, had poisoned her classmates. It was said that she had been pushed to the brink of madness due to constant bullying by her classmates. The student had laughed at her, made her feel invisible and worthless. In a moment of rage and sorrow, Tomi had poisoned her birthday cake and shared it to the whole class. By the time anyone realized what happened, it was too late. The entire class of SS3F was dead. But even in death, they didn't rest. Miss Ada, eyes widening as she read the final entry, detailing how the spirit of SS3F student had returned, haunting the school, unable to move on. Their unfinished business kept them trapped in the academy. Desperate for answers, Mrs. Ada visited Mama Shalewa, the school elderly cleaner, who had worked there since the beginning. Mama Shalewa was one of the few people who had seen the whole tragedy unfold. She had witnessed the ghost of SS3F firsthand. You don't know what you are dealing with, Miss Ada, Mama Shalewa said, her voice trembling as she spoke. I saw it with my own eyes, their uniform moving on their own, their whispers in the halls. It is not a story, It is real. What can I do to help them? Mrs. Ada asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How can I stop the curse? Mama Shalewa's face grew serious. The clock. The curse clock in SS3F is the key. If you want to free the spirits, you have to destroy it. The clock? Miss Ada repeated, confused. Yes, it is not just an ordinary clock. When it was set in SS3F, it became the anchor for the soul of the students. You have to burn it. Burn the clock and the curse will be lifted. Mrs. Ada gathered her courage that afternoon. She entered SS3F one last time, determined to end the nightmare. The students were sitting quietly, staring ahead as they always did. Mrs. Ada walked to the back of the room, where the clock hung on the wall. It was old and dusty, but still ticking. With shaky hands, Mrs. Ada pulled out a matches from her pocket and struck it against the matches box. The flame fingered, casting shadows above the room. She set the matches to the clock in the center of the classroom. At first, nothing happened, but the air grew thick, heavy. The whispers of the dead filled the room. Their voices grew louder and louder. The temperature dropped, and Miss Ada could feel the chill of the spirit close to her. But she did not stop. She stood there, watching the clock burn, listening to the voices grow faint. As the flame consumed the curse clock, the whisper turned to cry of relief. The spirits were finally free. When the clock turned to ashes, the room went silent. Mrs. Ada looked around, and for the first time, the ghost of SS3F smiled at her, their faces full of peace and gratitude. After that, they disappeared. The curse has been broken. The next day, Principal Tomi confessed everything. She told the entire school about the tragic events that has taken place in SS3F, how she had caused the deaths, and how the school had kept all the secrets. It was a very painful confession, but it was the one that allowed the spirit to rest. Mrs. Ada was hailed as a hero. The school would never forget her bravery, how she had faced the darkness and freed the soul of SS3F. The spirit of the students could finally rest in peace. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more amazing stories. A big thank you to all my returning subscribers. I truly appreciate your support. And to all the new viewers, welcome. Please hit that subscribe button and join the family. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I would love to hear from you. See you in my next one. Bye bye.